Welcome to today's presentation, The Tuskegee Institute and the Civilizing Mission, presented by the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum, whose mission is to honor anti-slavery abolitionists, their work to end slavery, and the legacy of that struggle, and strives to complete the second and ongoing abolition, the moral conviction to end racism. After the end of slavery in 1865, following the passing of the 13th Amendment, many formerly enslaved people in the South struggled to advance economically because many lacked an education, as they were not provided with one when they were enslaved, and in some cases were even forbidden from learning simple skills like reading. Thus, the population of free and formerly enslaved black people in the South was reduced to a cycle of poverty that maintained them in low-skilled jobs in industries like agriculture. However, in 1874, a man called Lewis Adams partnered with a former slave owner to establish a school that would teach the black population of Alabama essential skills, as no other institution existed that would provide them with a basic education. Adams, who had been enslaved himself in his earlier years, feared that the new free population of the formerly enslaved and their children would not be able to sustain themselves without essential skills that allowed them to enter into trades. Despite having been enslaved, Adams himself possessed many skills, working as a tradesman, and he possessed the ability to read and write. Therefore, more than anyone else, Adams understood the importance of education. The dream that Adams started when he established a school in 1874 on the idea that black people needed an education to thrive would soon become a reality through a larger institution serving thousands of students. In 1880, Adams made a deal with two white Democratic Party candidates seeking election to the Alabama Senate. In this deal, he would ensure that they received the larger share of the black vote to win their elections if they agreed to fund a normal school, essentially a teacher school, in Tuskegee, Alabama. Adams and a former slave owner, George W. Campbell, successfully lobbied to receive $2,000 annually to start the normal school in 1881, to begin teaching future teachers and to teach black students essential skills for trades. It was at this time that Adams recruited Booker T. Washington to serve as the principal of the school. Washington was also formerly enslaved, but his background did not limit him. By the 1880s, he had become a leading figure of the black community and went on to become a famous orator, writer, educator, and even advisee for many U.S. presidents regarding race relations in the country. Washington reached national fame in September of 1895 when he delivered a speech at an exposition in Atlanta, Georgia, dubbed the Atlanta Compromise by W.E.B. Du Bois. In it, he spoke about his belief of the need for blacks to acquire a vocational education that would enable them to learn industrial occupations and other practical trades. Such trades would give blacks the opportunity to advance economically. He emphasized that it was better that they pursue these vocations rather than more intellectual fields in higher education. Many individuals criticized this speech as it implied that Washington believed black Americans should not focus on acquiring equality or protecting civil rights, like the right to vote, but instead focus on, quote, uplifting themselves economically. It was seen as a statement of accommodation to Southern whites who believed that black Americans should, quote, know their place, end quote, and not strive for too much. Essentially, Washington was making the case that it was better, at least for the moment, for black Americans to focus on uplifting their race through vocations that gave them some economic freedom and should tolerate discrimination in the meantime. This was in contrast to the belief of individuals like W.E.B. Du Bois, who believed that black Americans needed to struggle for civil rights, such as the right to vote, in order to advance. This idea that black Americans could uplift themselves was known both as racial uplift and the civilizing mission. The term civilizing mission highlighted the fact that this idea went on to have further repercussions in the imperialism of the late 1800s. After all, the Tuskegee Institute not only served Black American students, but also Africans, who traveled to the U.S. to receive an industrial education. Therefore, the Tuskegee model was also implemented in Africa and was seen as, quote-unquote, civilizing Africans by providing them with an industrial education. The civilizing mission also came to Africa with the opening of satellite institutions like the Booker Washington Agricultural and Industrial Institute in Liberia, established in 1929, becoming the country's first agriculture and vocational school. Nonetheless, in an era where Black Americans had few economic opportunities, the Tuskegee Institute provided many talented youths with the opportunity to seek better futures. Under the leadership of Booker T. Washington, the school went from being housed in a small building in a churchyard to becoming a multi-building institution on over 100 acres of land by 1882. By the time of Booker T. Washington's death in 1915, when he was still the principal of the Tuskegee Institute, the school had acquired $1.5 million for an endowment and now occupied 2,300 acres of land. The Tuskegee Institute would play a prominent role in U.S. history. In the late 1930s, because of its aeronautical training programs, it was selected as a site to train Black American pilots that would play a pivotal role in World War II. The Tuskegee Airmen, as they would be called, would be the first Black military aviators in the U.S. Army Air Corps. Their exceptional service would be a key factor, alongside the service of other Black Americans during the war, for Harry S. Truman to desegregate the armed forces after the war. We will be posting separate videos on both the desegregation of the armed forces and the Tuskegee Airmen later this month. The Institute also boasted renowned faculty like George Washington Carver. Carver was an agricultural scientist and inventor who promoted alternative crops to cotton in order to prevent soil depletion, and was one of the most renowned Black scientists of the 20th century. Carver conducted many experiments at the Institute in his quest to help prevent soil depletion and to help farmers diversify the crops they grew. It is difficult to fully state the important role that the Institute played in advancing Black Americans' educational attainment, economic security, and intellectual life. The author, Ralph Ellison, an alumnus of the Institute, conveys just how important the university was when his fictional main character describes his time at an unnamed university, which we can assume was modeled after the Institute, since Ellison himself had attended the Tuskegee Institute, in his award-winning book, Invisible Man. In the book, the main character describes an epicenter of intellectual growth and innovation, and one can see how institutions like the Tuskegee Institute were stepping stones for many talented and intelligent Black youth seeking to make their way in the world where the cards were stacked against them. In 1965, the Tuskegee Institute was demarcated as a National Historic Landmark given its contributions to the advancement of education. Today, the Tuskegee Institute, now called Tuskegee University, educates around 3,000 students from around the U.S. and 30 countries, and continues to be among the highest-ranking historically Black colleges and universities in the U.S. Thank you for attending today's presentation. Please help us by completing a brief survey at the link on your screen and also in the video description. Your feedback will help NAHOF receive funding and help plan future projects. Additionally, please contact NAHOF with any questions or comments, or if you're interested in learning more about the organization. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and we hope to see you at our next presentation. Thank you.